Gosh, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. Like, what is the it factor?
The It Factory is back for season 2. Last season, we explored what the It Factory is, who has it, and how they got it. This season, we still seek to answer the same questions, but with a new cast of characters. We take the helmet off some of the new faces in the Conference of Champions, and some familiar faces as well. Players, coaches, and experts will explore what it is that sets them up for success on Saturdays. I'm Yogi Roth, and welcome back to the It Factory. Okay, welcome back or welcome to the It Factory. I'm your host, Yogi Roth. We are presented by Zayo, and it's full-on spring football, and we've got some new head coaches, and I'm so excited to talk to our guest today. The new head coach at Stanford, Troy Taylor. I've known Troy for a long time when he was not only just coaching in high school and the quarterbacks he was influencing, but then at Eastern Washington and then at Utah. We saw what he did at Sac State. And I remember back in the day when he was with the Jets. We're going to talk about all those things with today's guest. So with that, Coach Taylor, welcome to the show, man.
Great, Yogi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for making the time. I know you're extremely busy in year one, but I want to start with a quote that I've heard you say, which is, "The Stanford man is the most competitive person in the world." What makes you say that, and offer some color to that thought?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at what the Stanford man does in the classroom and on the field, they're trying to be the very best. They don't settle for taking usual classes. You know, they're usually challenging themselves with a lot of rigor in the classroom, and then they came here to challenge themselves against the brightest students in the entire world. So that's a competitive person, and they also have that same competitive zeal on the field, in the weight room, training, and those are the type of people we want to continue to attract.
So when you talk to anybody who has known you from back in the day, I was talking to Coach Carroll about you, whether it's people on your staff currently or in between, everybody talks about your competitive temperament. So how did that get curated as you look back on your life up until now?
That's a great question. I think first kind of sight, I raced motorcycles when I was really little, 4.5 years old, and I was not a good loser. So I think it might be a little bit genetic, just innate. I think my parents kind of fostered that by putting me in sports, and it's a good avenue. I have learned how to be more gracious in defeat, but that takes a while, Yogi.
Okay, let's dig into motorcycles. One, do you have one now? And then 4.5, like, were you better at riding a motorcycle than a bicycle at that age?
Oh man, yeah. So it was 4.5. Yeah. So it was in Southern California, and we would kind of travel and Saddleback and Indian Dunes. All these, I don't even think they're open anymore. Carlsbad, and so I remember I was racing for, I guess they considered a national championship. I don't know if everybody from the entire country was there, and I'd really never been beaten in the 50cc class. And this race, which was the biggest race of my life, there was usually you would start and finish, you'd take your laps and whatnot, and you'd finish at the same line as the starting line was. Well, in this one, there was a different line. The finish line was up about 50 yards, as I remember it. And so I thought I had won the race, and I took my hand off the throttle, and the person that was in second place passed me right before I got to the finish line, which I didn't realize. And so pretty traumatic event. Got off the bike after I figured out that I finished second, and proceeded to kick the living crap out of the bike. And then my mom had to come and kind of carry me away. And I don't think I ever raced motocross again after that. I think honestly, my dad was worried about me getting injured. But as a kid, I just thought, oh, well, I lost, so maybe there's some sort of something that happened there where I learned, well, I guess you don't lose or you don't get to race anymore. So, but it's enough for me to remember at that age that I think it did have some sort of effect on me. So.
Wow. And no motorcycle ever since then?
Nope. Never again. Yeah, that was it. So, which I went into, football and baseball, and the guy that beat me ended up being a professional rider for like 20 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I think we found our next documentary. Uh, I mean, I think we need to make sure that we play this clip for your student athletes at Stanford, because I know they're cruising around on those scooters and mopeds all over campus. They have no idea the background of you in that discipline.
Yeah, it was fun. I
Oh,
remember it as being really fun. I loved competing always. I've always just loved competing. That's one thing that I was really connected with Pete Carroll, as he talks about competing. And for me, it's just, for a long time, it was like, well, I got to be somebody that doesn't, have to win or have to compete. And then at some point, I just embraced it. I'm like, just kind of way I'm wired, and the important thing is, you're going to lose if you compete. You just are. It's going to happen. To be able to move on, learn from it and then move on. And that's what being mindful is about is wanting to win, wanting to do your very best, but being able to move on to the next moment, the next day. And that's what I've learned to do, because you got to, as a leader, you can't sulk around for weeks and feel bad for yourself. You just got to learn from it and move on to the next moment.
yeah, that's fascinating. I remember when I first met Coach Carroll. I'm curious if your moment was similar when you were with the Jets, but I learned about like the Latin root of the word compete and how it's, originally defined as on our phone, hey, let's strive against. But the Latin, the origin of the word is to strive together. And when I heard that, like, it was like a totally different language coming to
Wow.
me. Like when you got into the league and got around some of that, and really your competitiveness was tested at the highest levels,
Yeah.
what were some of the things you learned about the essence of yourself?
Yeah, I think that one was touching on Pete Carroll. I know I used to just appreciate, because he did like that in me. I remember I felt very connected to him, and I think a lot of people did. That's what makes him a great coach, is a lot of people felt connected to Pete. I was a quarterback. He was a defensive coordinator, but he would play basketball with us and compete. You would sometimes do two-hand touch football games, and he would find a way to get in the game. And so it was really fun. But he also had a spirit about him that, I don't know, he just believed in you, And for me, it was like, once I got away from that, I was only with the Jets for a couple of years. I remember how impactful that was about how he made me feel and how that made me better, I thought. And so I took that, and that's a big part of my coaching philosophy, is to have that positive energy. Now, there's only one Pete Carroll. I mean, there just is. But to be able to remember how impactful you can be as a coach by just the energy you have around you and believing in people and making it fun, having a fun environment, those things are really impactful. And then, the competitive thing, the things I realize about myself is I think faster, and the synapses and all those things happen at a higher rate for me. I see things a little bit slower when I compete. So when I'm really getting into a competition and calling plays or whatnot, I kind of rise to the occasion a little bit more, and see things a little bit better. So.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's always and often reflected by your players. You told me something when we first connected when you were at Eastern, and then you echoed it again at Utah, where when you said you stepped away from college coaching and got into the high school realm, you created a masterclass for yourself and really tried to pour in all the disciplines of all these coaches that were coming to see your players
Yeah.
in high school. When you look at that now in the chair that you're in at Stanford, what did that do for you coming out of the league, then into college coaching, and then into this world of high school for a little while?
Yeah, it was like, there was kind of a lightness for me, because when you're at the high school level, especially us, we weren't very good to begin with. Nobody really paid too much attention to us. So I could try all these crazy things and think outside the box, and there was no really consequences, and I can learn from it. If it worked, I'd be, oh, that's pretty cool, and move on. And I think when you're a college coach, you only get 15 spring practices, and so you're pretty contained. I was doing it every day at Folsom High School in our class period, so I was getting the 10,000 hours. I was quadrupling, probably 10 times more coaching than college coaches would get, because I do it every single day and get to work with players at different levels. So what does this work with a guy that's not super athletic? How can we get him open? What can we do? How can we spread the field? And so for me, it was really 14 years, Yogi, of trying a bunch of different things and just morphing it and then adjusting and getting it just right, and then maybe adjusting it again. And then about that time, I was like, all right, I think I want to try this at the college level and see how it works, because I just wanted a challenge. And so to me, those were the most impactful years, is when nobody was really paying attention. And I was just kind of in a laboratory, just working football every single day.
I think how you worked football is really fascinating. You know, a lot of coaches, we see them after their playing career get into the profession, and you're in it, right? You got in it, you dipped out, you're broadcasting and coaching, as you just referenced. And then you hit this, I'd imagine, like this challenge, this competitive temperament, as you said, of, I want to go for it. What was it like to do that? But you had a family, like you had this stage where you're like, okay, we're probably going to move a few times,
Yeah.
and let's go hit the gas like I'm 4.5 again on that throttle.
Yeah. So when, I only, another big mentor for me is Chris Peterson. And so, I just got to know him through recruiting Jake Browning. I'd always admired him, always tried to learn from him just through reading and all those things. But when I was looking to get into college football, the only person I told that I was interested was Chris Peterson. And Coach Pete, he's one of those guys that he wants to help out people and he wants to make a difference. So he didn't tell me, but when the job at Eastern Washington came open, he called Bo Baldwin and said, hey, this is the guy you got to interview. I only have one name for you. You got to interview him. And I think Bo told me, when Chris Peterson tells me something, I usually listen because he's really smart. So when Bo came out and interviewed me or talked to me, we talked for like 4.5, 5 hours. And I just kind of shared my philosophy and how to coach offensive football and all those things. And then he offered me the job. And I had to go tell my wife that I was going to take a 2/3 pay cut to move the family up to Spokane, Washington, or Cheney, Washington. And that look was a look I will always remember, of how are we going to, she kind of tilted her head, kind of like, are you serious? Is this real? We had just had our house was going to be paid off in a year. We both were teachers, tenured teachers. So it was a big leap of faith. The great thing is about my wife is she really believes in me. So she could have easily at that point said, hey, Troy, I know you want to do this, but this just isn't the right move for our family. And it would have never happened. And she didn't say that. She said, all right, we can do this. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to make it work. And, we went up there and it was turned out to be fun. But, it was a great ride. It was just, I always look at it as like, as far as we know, you got one shot on earth. Let's do it. Let's try and do the best we can. Let's take on challenges and let's have fun doing it. And if we are not, then why do it,
When you told her you got offered the job at Stanford, what was the look that she gave you then?
She couldn't believe it. Yeah, she gave me a huge hug. And, we had, I just remember being in the kitchen in Sacramento when I decided to go back into college football, and we're like, okay, well, 5 years, we'll give it 5 years to try and be a head coach, and just embarking on that. And so luckily I was able to do it at Sacramento State, and then, to be in the Pac-12, and then at a place like Stanford that I really coveted this place. It was kind of beyond a dream. I still feel very fortunate. And sometimes it's, I know this word's overused, but kind of surreal. Sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm the head coach at Stanford. It's the same place that Bill Walsh was the head coach, So I'm still like a little kid. I get pretty excited about being here and being the Stanford head coach.
Yeah, well, we're excited for it as well. With that said, I went back to one of our conversations in 2017, and we talked about the quarterback position and how you wanted your offense to minimize anxiety for that side of the ball and create it for the defensive side. I say that because I feel like now in college football and even high school recruiting, like anxiety's coming from everywhere, not just like a ball or three technique or, a complex play call. Like, how do you now look and view that position with everything that's coming with quarterbacks once they get to your system and this big business of college football?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, on the football end of it, I always look at it, like Steve Jobs and Johnny Ives, the designers and the iPhone and all those things, they would always go back to how easy it is for the user. And they would redo things and start over with the iPhone. And so that's what I try to focus on is like, how can I make this easier for the quarterback. And so I always try to look at it through the lens of the quarterback's eyes. Now, I'm 54. It's been a while since I played football, so it's becoming harder and harder to do this. But I just try to have empathy for what they're asked to do. And we build, honestly, Yogi, build the whole practice. Everything we do is based on for the quarterback. It's trying to make it more user-friendly and so that he can be successful. Because if the quarterback's successful, you can have a really good chance to win a football game. If he's not successful, it's going to be a challenge. On the other parts of it, yeah, it's a changing world. I mean, I never had to deal with Twitter and social media and people judging you and throwing these things out. So you try to make it a safe environment in the building when they're here, that they feel at peace, that they feel that they can be themselves, that they're accepted for who they are as a person, and that we're going to love them either way. And hopefully they'll be able to manage those things that are outside the building. It certainly isn't easy. It's really hard for quarterbacks, but that's why you got to have somebody that has some fortitude about it, has some strength of character, that doesn't have a lot of highs and lows in their personality. Because if you do, it's this position where you'll get torn up pretty badly.
Yeah, it's a fascinating position, right? You played it, you coach it, you live it every single day. And from my lens, it felt like in the last decade, the position's transitioned from, you got to come into our college environment and it's so hard. Maybe it'll take you 2-3 years to learn it. And almost like there was a pride in that. And now I feel it's like passers are so elite in high school that it's like, how quickly can we get them to play free and play competent? Maybe that playbook's a little less as a freshman or sophomore versus a junior or a senior. And I think that it's allowing players to maximize their potential, right? And play a little free. For you coming in year one, like how do you, knowing you're giving them a brand new playbook, a brand new, weight workout, a brand new everything, make sure that life for the Stanford football player, in addition to school as a Stanford student athlete, can allow them to play free amid the system that you've curated?
Yeah, I think, and I think Stanford is different. These guys are intellectually curious, I think is the best way to describe them. They have lots of interests, and I think that's great. They're interesting to talk to. We want them to be a part of just not football, but this amazing campus, the amazing student athletes and professors and all the people that make Stanford really Stanford. And so what we try to do is be really efficient with their time. So in strength and conditioning, when they come in, they're in and out, in an hour. It's organized to the detail of it, every second of what they're doing. We don't waste their time with stuff that's extraneous and just as time wasters. We don't do that. And on the football end, we do the same thing. So everything's really efficient. Try to make it as fun as possible. And then, for the quarterback is just making it pretty user-friendly. I know that they got other stuff going on. So if I can't create a system, offensively and then on the defensive side of the ball and special teams, if we can't create it when they're here, they can focus in for a short amount of time, learn it, and learn to be experts. Obviously, they're going to be better in 3 years. But, yeah, the days of redshirting a quarterback and then 2 years developing and then bring them in, I just don't think that's realistic because you're right. They're so talented. Most of those guys do not want, you say redshirt to them, and it's like a foreign language, So I think you do have to, I think the game has changed in the fact that you can't wait around for Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you got to be able to have cast a larger net and have a multitude of players that can come into your system and be successful. So you don't eliminating by having to have this incredible aptitude for learning things. At the end of the day, when you're playing, it's about instinct and reacting. When we try to turn this into a CEO position and all these managing formations and fronts and coverages and checks, you're eliminating some really competitive and very talented young players by them having to learn that. It's incapacitating. It slows them down, and they don't react. They start thinking. So I look at, people talk about decision making. It's more instinct, and so it's trained instinct, but you got to have a way that they can be able to go through their progression and play freely, where they're not thinking about too much. They're just seeing space, throwing into space, and reacting. And when we see people that are playing at a high level, they almost always, you ask them what they were thinking, they almost always say, I wasn't thinking at all. And when they play
Yeah.
poorly and you ask them, what were you thinking? They usually say, I had a lot on my mind. So we're trying to eliminate thinking where they can just play.
Love that. The space between commitment and hesitation can be so small.
Yes.
With that said, one of my favorite phrases is front load. Right? By that I mean, like, what is a program front loading when a recruit or a current player walks into the doors of the facility? Are they front loading NIL? Are they front loading starting? Are they front loading a degree? Are they front loading going to the league? Like, what are they front loading for you? Like, what's the first thing you hope people feel as a prospect, their parents, a player, player's parents, an alum feels when they walk through the door of your facility?
That's an awesome question. I hope that they feel that our culture is different. It's unique. That we love what we're doing. That this is not a transactional organization or team. That we really care about our guys. That we want them to have a great experience, and that we're really competitive and we want to win championships. So that's what I hope. And then when they get there, hopefully we live up to that expectations. That I want them to leave here saying this was the most incredible experience they've had in their life. That their 4 years here was awesome in every capacity. And so at the end of the day, Yogi, that's how I think we're going to win, is with our culture, with how we treat people, that when they're in our building, they really like being here. They like talking football. They like being around us. And then being really creative and showing ingenuity and a mindset that's attacking on all three phases. We're not playing to protect leads or to not lose. We're playing to win games and attack. And if we win, great. We're really happy. If we lose, we'll learn from it, and then we'll move on to the next one.
All right, Coach, I call this my final five.
Okay.
So first thought that comes to mind before we let you go. Question number one, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Be yourself, I would say. Yeah, just be yourself. I think people, and that becomes, when you're a kid and you hear that, you're like, I don't even know if I like myself, But as you get older, I think that what the people are saying is be the best version of yourself, And so I think people connect with you when you're authentic and sincere. And, if you're going to fail, do it being who you are and not trying to be somebody else.
The worst advice you've ever received is what?
Well, that's a great question. Just give up, or don't worry about it. Just quit. I think you can get into a pattern of giving up when things aren't going your way. I think probably my career in the NFL, I'd lost a little passion and kind of gave up on that part of it. And I think regret's a really bad thing to live with. When you quit a little bit earlier. I met Jim Plunkett, who won the Heisman here at Stanford, and he, people forget as we get older, they forget about his unusual route. He went to the Patriots. He was the Rookie of the Year, and didn't work out there. Went to the 49ers. They cut him. They released him. He was thinking about quitting. The Raiders wanted to sign him. His wife, Jerry, talked him into continuing to play, and he won 2 more Super Bowls and was the MVP. And so a lot of times I think you're so close, and all you got to do is just hang in there and continue to compete and do your best. And a lot of times you're a lot closer than you think.
You stated many times that love is a cornerstone principle in your program. Why so?
I think the only way, well, one is I've never following the track of chasing money. I've never done it. It's not that I don't like money. I think it's great, and you can do some great things with it. But for me, I always wanted to do things that I really enjoyed, because I figure you sleep 1/3 of your life, you work 1/3 of your life, and 1/3 of your life you do whatever, hang out with your friends and family. So I figured I'm going to spend 1/3 at least of working. I might as well do something that I really love. And if I'm doing it and I love it, it doesn't seem like work. So I still can't believe they pay me to be the head coach at Stanford, because I would do it for free. So probably not a great negotiation tactic, but I just want to have a good time, enjoy what I'm doing.
Love that. Number 4, the show is titled The It Factor. I think everybody has an it factor. As you look at your life now and your program, what do you hope the it factor of Stanford football is moving forward?
think that you see a team that really loves one another, loves playing football, that you can see that when you watch them play, that we're just different, that we're unique. When you're around us, we're not driven by fear. We're driven by love, love of football, love of each other, love of competing, and that you feel that when you see us play. We call it, the way of the cardinal. That's kind of the way we do things, and that's love, mindfulness, gratitude, and competitive. So at the end of the day, that's what I hopefully bring to this program, and that you can see on display, on Saturdays.
All right, so from riding the 50cc little motorbike to sitting where you are now, head coach of this glorious football program, how would you finish the sentence? It all comes down to what?
I think, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but to love, I think the greatest things in life are really derived from love. If you think about your relationships with people, if you love them, I think you get more back in return. If you love what you're doing, if you love your experience, I'm one of those people that kind of just believes in possibility, that, if you got the right attitude and you're willing to put in, you love what you're doing, then you can you can create your own reality, really. I know bad things happen to people, and that's real. But, I look at you and your job and your life. You've created an unbelievable thing for yourself, and you can tell you can breathe what you're doing. You love it. I love coaching. I love being around student athletes. So I think I've got the greatest life in the world. But you can go the other route, two-man lookout prison bars, and one saw mud and the other saw stars. It's just kind of, what's your perspective? How are you looking at things?
I'm really excited to have you in the league. And I know my partner, Ted Robinson, and I, we look forward to getting you on the headset with us. I mean, you're a master at that. You could send it to commercial break. You know how to take it from the studio. So all of those things will be fun. Coach Taylor, thank you for the time and attention. Best of luck in spring football, and then training camp, and week 1 will be here before we know it. Thanks again.
Thanks, Yogi. I really appreciate you, brother.
Anytime. There it is, the new head coach at Stanford, Troy Taylor. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. All Stanford fans, share it. Cal fans, I know you're going to dig it, and Pac-12 fans, you better listen to understand what this program is all about. As always, if you want to listen to us, just go to pac-12.com/insider. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just type in Yogi Roth, The It Factory. It'll pop right up. With that said, stay safe. Peace. It's the Afterglow. Producer TJ Brassel, Yogi Roth. That was Troy Taylor. We want to make sure we get these new head coaches on, dive into their philosophy. TJ, you're taking notes the whole time. What'd you think? What do you wish we asked the new head coach on the phone?
Well, before we even get into that, I just want to give our audience like a little insight of what happens before the interview. Like before we get rolling, we sit down, whoever our guest is will join the call, and we'll be chatting for a little bit, and just before we get going. This is not the first time I've heard a guest say to you, Yogi, you look great, but this is the first time I've heard them say that you're a young Harrison Ford, and I just want to hear how that landed on you first.
Yeah. Well, Harrison Ford's in the news now. He's got a great show on Apple Plus. We watch it in this house. It felt great. I'll clip that. Make sure you clip that. Send it off to my wife. Throw it on YouTube. So it's
Perfect.
Populating forever. Yeah.
No, but I mean, I thought that interview was awesome. The thing that really stood out to me with him, and has stood out to me with Stanford coaches in the past. I mean, there hasn't been a new Stanford head coach for football in a very long time, but it's the pride that they all take in being the Stanford head coach. It really stands out to me. Like every head coach is always very prideful to be a head coach, but there's just something that always stands out about like when they get to Coach Shaw just seemed so proud of being in that role, and Coach Taylor seems so proud of being in that role. And when he was talking about like, I'm in the same role that Bill Walsh was in back in the day, and just when they talk about that, like it's just such a cool sentiment to see. And honestly, like there wasn't a lot that I wish you had asked. I just thought it was super interesting about like when he talks about his mentors, to you could say decently notable coaches in the Pac-12 and Pete Carroll and Chris Peterson, like just coming from a tree like that. Or honestly, I wanted to hear more about the racing motorcycles. Like Did he technically launch that guy's career who beat him? Because he said he was a pro for like 20 years. Like I think
we're
we
gonna
can
find out. Yeah, who is that? We'll find that out. I'll get that for Coach Taylor for sure. Look, there was a lot there. I mean, we did not empty the bag of research. Like we just kind of got started on it. I love how we went into the quarterback thing with some detail. I wanted to ask him about his defense because he got 3 really young, maybe 4 young defensive linemen that you could argue David Bailey is the best defensive lineman in the league. You know, as a freshman last year was easily one of the best freshmen in the country. So it's so much attention on his offense. I wanted to ask him a little bit more football stuff, and we'll get there, of course, as time goes on. I love what he referenced about being intellectually curious. I had Michael Wilson as my intern for a year, who's now going to the league. You can listen to him. He was on this podcast before, former Stanford wide receiver. That's him, right? Tanner McKee was on this show. That's him. Bryson Tremaine was on this show. That's him. Like, there's something that I always come home from a Stanford broadcast, and I'm like, to my family and my wife, I'm like, Stanford guys are just kind of different, you know? And it's not a knock on any other institution, but it's just kind of a celebration of like, just imagine A, what it takes to get in, and then B, how you have to operate in that. So I want to kind of learn more about like how he's been around players, right? They've had a couple workouts now and winter conditioning and training sessions. So I want to follow up on that. But I think overall, the big picture for me is that he understands the power of the job at Stanford. And I really took away from this interview, like how prepared he is for this.
Absolutely.
You know, like Jed Fish, he did so much work in advance of the Arizona job that, you know, nobody really knew about. I think the same thing here for Troy Taylor, of that, you know, that time at high school where he created his masterclass, because it'd be Chip Kelly, it'd be Mike Leach, it'd be Chris Peterson. I mean, it'd be all the David Shaw, it'd be all the people that would come through Folsom High School to ask about his players. Then he would ask them like, hey, let me learn from you. And then he, as he said, I think it was period 6, at least per my notes from 6 years ago, like 6th period at Folsom High School was masterclass time. And let's try the run and shoot. Let's try the triple option. Let's try this. Let's try that. So I just think he's done all the work to be prepared for this opportunity. And it's not going to happen overnight there because of the strength of the league. But I don't think it's going to take as long as people think. And I'm really intrigued to watch it shake out.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And one of the last things is that I noted was when he was talking about eliminating thinking out there. I thought that was really cool because like as an athlete, you always hear like, don't think, just react. That's when you're going to be your best. And when you have athletes at that high of a level, them just reacting is going to be how they perform the best. So him being so cognizant of that and being like, I want you to, like, obviously you have to think to know everything, but like, I don't want you to overthink things on the field, just react. I thought that will pay dividends in my opinion.
Amen. Amen. Look at you dropping dividends on a Stanford podcast. Of course you are. Intellectual brutality at its finest. All right, there it is. Troy Taylor. Hard to believe we're almost at the end of season 2, but it's been fun having such variance of conversations through the course of this off season. As always, let us know what you think. Stanford fans, what do you think after learning some things that nobody knew? I've never seen anything about Troy Taylor riding a 50cc motorcycle at 4.5. I mean, I got an 8-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. I can't fathom at 8 him cruising on a motorcycle right now, let alone 4.5. Like, this story is not done. This one, I feel like we get a lot out of it all season long. You'll listen to the broadcast. ESPN, Fox, we'll talk about it in the Pac-12. Just make sure you know where it started, the origin of that story right here, baby. All right, we got you, TJ. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Peace.